There's a conversation you have not had yet. You know the one that has been sitting in your chest for months, maybe longer. The thing you have been meaning to say to the person who needs to hear it, the boundary you've been meaning to draw, the truth you've been meaning to tell, that opinion you've been swallowing in the meeting, at the dinner table, in the relationship, on the platform where you have a voice and a following and a message that people showed up specifically to hear, and you keep not saying it. And every day you do not say it, you are saying something else instead. Silence is not neutral. Silence is a choice that communicates as loudly as any word you could have spoken. When you go quiet in the room where your voice is needed, the room does not experience a pause. It experiences an absence. And that absence lands on the people around you, on the people listening, on the person across from you who needed the truth and got the management of your own discomfort instead. And it lands on you too. Every time you swallow the thing that needed to be said, your nervous system registers it, it files it, and it adds it to the accumulating record of moments when you chose safety over truth. And that record, like everything we talk about here, has a cost. Again, not a big fireworks dramatic one, but a slow compounding, nobody names it cost that shows up as the inexplicable flatness in work you used to love. It shows up in the resentment in relationships you chose. Shows up in the distance between who you are and who you say you are that keeps widening without a single dramatic event to point to. You are not being damaged by the things you are saying. You are being damaged by the things you're not saying. You guys, welcome back to the Listen Bitch podcast. I am Brandon Lynette, your voice authority podcast coach. Your mess is your message, and today the mess is the voice you've been sitting on. The thing you came here to say that you've been almost saying for longer than you want to admit. And before we dive in, today's episode is brought to you by my favorite super patch. I want to talk about Liberty today, something that I wear every single day for balance and mobility, the physical freedom to move the way your body is supposed to. Okay. Um, and I want to connect that to this. Your voice is your mobility. It's how you move through the world, how you take up space, how you carry the weight of everything you were given to carry. When it is restricted, when you have been keeping it small, keeping it safe, swallowing the things that needed to come out, you are compensating. Walking with a limp, you have been pretending it's not there. Liberty is what I think about when I think about voice. It is the freedom to move without compensation. You guys, all of my patches, and I have a patch for everybody, for everything, okay? They are drug free, zero ingredient. It's a vibrotactile technology, registered medical device, okay? Telling your body it can move the way it was made to. I've got a link in the show notes. Have a conversation with me. Y'all know I still answer my own messages, okay? Um, so if you have questions, if you're like, I know I need a patch, help me figure out what's going to best serve me, please reach out. So let's talk about this silence, the thing you've been doing and what it's actually costing you. You guys, your brain has a specific response to the suppression of authentic expression, and it's not subtle. When you have something true to say, something that is real and relevant and yours, and you choose not to say it, the brain registers a conflict. The anterior cingulate cortex, okay, I've talked about that before. That's the brain's conflict detector, and it's going to fire. It notices the gap between what is true and what is being expressed, and that is going to generate friction, that low grade, hard to move, hard to name friction of someone who is not being fully themselves within their own lives. It messes with your brain and heart coherence connection, and over time, and this is where it gets genuinely important, this repeated suppression of authentic expression does something specific to the neural pathways in your brain that produce it. So every time you have the thought and choose not to voice it, you are reinforcing the pathway that says this is not safe to say. You're training the brain that your own voice is a threat to manage rather than an asset to deploy. And the brain, in its extraordinary faithfulness to the patterns that you've given it, builds the wiring for silence the same way it builds the wiring for anything else that gets repeated. It becomes automatic. The thought arrives, the suppression fires, your throat tightens, the moment passes, you move on, and you don't even notice it happening because the program is now running faster than your conscious awareness. And this is where neuroplasticity changes everything. The pathway for silence can be interrupted and the pathway for voice can be built in its place. Yeah, I'm going to say it's not instant and it's not without discomfort. The first few times you say the thing, your nervous system is going to respond like you have done something dangerous. Like, bitch, you are fighting a bear right now because it's been trained to believe that that you have been attacked and been in this fight. But with repetition, that consistent experience of saying the true thing and proving that you're going to survive it, proof that the world is not ending, that the relationship's not collapsing, proof of the person across from you actually hearing you and the sky still staying in place. The brain builds the new data, the new evidence, a new conclusion. And the new conclusion is my voice is survivable. My truth is worth the risk. The thing I have to say has the right to exist in the room. That pathway becomes the default. It's not quickly, but it becomes it. And when it does, the flatness, it lifts. The resentment dissolves. The distance closes because you are finally fully present in your own life. Not just managing it from behind the glass of careful silence, but you're actually in it. Your voice is a trainable muscle. And right now, it's atrophied from disuse. And that is fixable. And we're going to start today. And the messages that your silence is sending that you never intended to send, we're going to talk about that because the people in your life, they're reading them. They are reading them clearly and they are responding to them. And you are probably confused about some of the responses you're getting because you do not realize the conversation has been happening without your words. When you go quiet in the relationship rather than saying the thing that needs to be said, you are not communicating safety. You're communicating distance. And so the other person does not experience your silence as peace. They experience it as absence, as unavailability, as that they experience this very specific disorienting loneliness of being in a relationship with someone who is physically present and emotionally, mentally somewhere else. Over time, this person's going to stop trying to reach the part of you that's gone quiet. They're going to stop asking. They stop inviting. They learn the shape of the silence and they build their life around it. And then you're like, I wonder why the intimacy is not what it used to be. When you go quiet in the professional context, when you have the insight and you phrase it as a question so it goes down easier, or when you have the disagreement and you nod politely instead of just saying what the fuck you need to say, when you know something is wrong and you say nothing because the room does not feel safe enough for your actual opinion, you're not being strategic. You're being erased slowly, one unspoken truth at a time. And the people in the room are getting a version of you that is less useful, less real, and less trustworthy than the actual one because authenticity is the only thing that produces actual trust. Managed silence produces managed distance. And when you go quiet on the platform, when you have a voice in an audience and a message that people showed up to hear, and you keep doing this thing where you just kind of soften it, where you hedge it, qualify it down to something safe enough so that you're not offending anyone, you are not being wise. You're being unfaithful to the calling. You're being unfaithful to the people who need the unhedged version, to God who put the thing in you specifically because it was needed and does not need you to manage it before it's delivered. A woman I know built a following over 2 years. Real people, real engagement, a community that had chosen her specifically. She spent these 2 years giving them 70% of what she actually thought, and 30% she kept back. And that was the stuff she was afraid would cost her. That faith perspective, very specific positions on things, even politically. Um, the full version of the message that was actually hers. She gave them the palatable version. And the community was okay. I mean, they engaged enough. We got her analytics up, but not alive. Not the way a community gets alive when a person leading it is fully, unapologetically, completely themselves. Um, then she had a conversation, and I'll tell you about that in a minute, that changed everything. She stopped keeping the 30% back. She said the things, all of them, without the qualification, and half the community lost their ever loving minds, which she expected, and that was her biggest fear. And the other half, the half that had been waiting, I feel like we sense the gap when someone's not completely themselves. They knew there had to be more behind what she was giving them. Those guys responded with the kind of engagement that she had never seen before. Her inbox is blowing up. There were tears, people saying, finally, people saying, I thought I was the only one who believed this, people saying, I've been waiting for someone to say this out loud. The ones who left were never her people. The ones who stayed were. And she got them by finally saying the damn thing. Listen, bitch, your 30% is someone's lifeline. Stop protecting yourself with it. Big tech built the platforms, and then they built the moderation systems, and then they built the algorithm suppression tools. Then they called it community safety. And what it actually is, right? Y'all know I'm in TikTok jail, right? Uh, you haven't seen a TikTok from me in a couple of weeks because that's why. Not a couple of weeks, I think since last week. For sharing a quote from RFK Jr. It was an honest quote, and I got flagged for the second time. What this actually is with this system, what it's always been, is the systematic silencing of voices that produce thinking they cannot monetize and movements they can't control. The voices that get suppressed are not the dangerous ones. They are the clear ones, the ones that name what is happening without the approved framing. Those voices are the ones that connect dots the systems do not want connected. They're the voices that are specific enough and true enough and said loudly enough that the people who hear them start asking questions that are inconvenient for the structures built on your compliance. Your silence is not neutral. Your silence is complicity, and it's a fucking gift to every system that needs you to shut the fuck up. Every time you swallow the truth thing, every time you soften the message until the edge is gone, every time you stay safe in that little safe lane because the uncomfortable lane has cost you something you're not ready to pay. Every time you keep the 30% back because you are afraid the ones who will leave, the system wins. They win one unspoken truth at a time. The church has fallen in this bullshit too. They participated. Religious culture has used the language of humility and unity and not causing division to silence the voices of people whose truth would have required the institution to change. If speaking the true thing would disrupt the structure finds theological language for why speaking is ungodly. That's not holiness, that's self preservation. And the people whose voices got managed in the name of peace have been paying the cost of their own management in their own lives and their own callings. And the specific flat bullshit that comes from a person who was made to say something and has been talked out of saying it. Christ is king. Y'all, the king was not quiet. He said the hard shit in every room he entered. He told the Pharisees exactly what they were. He told the rich young ruler exactly what it would cost. He told Peter, "Get behind me, Satan," in front of everybody. He cleared the temple with physical force. He was not strategic about his message, he was faithful to it. And he paid the cost of that faithfulness fully and without complaint and changed the entire world in the process. Your voice is in the lineage of that. When the fuck are you going to act like it? There's a specific time I went quiet when I should have spoken in a professional situation, in a room with people who had influence over a direction I was building towards. There was a moment where something was said that I fundamentally disagreed with, not slightly, not even in a this is a nuanced difference disagreement, but like bone deep, this is so fucking wrong disagreement. The kind where everything in you knows the true thing and the true thing is waiting to come out of your mouth. And there's just that moment, like a pause, a breath, where you can either say it or you let it pass. I let it pass. Not because I was being wise, but because the room felt unsafe and the stakes felt high and the cost of saying it felt bigger than the cost of not saying it. which was the story my filter told me in my brain, which was, as we talked about the last episode, not necessarily accurate. I sat in the meeting for like another 45 minutes watching a direction get established, and I knew it was wrong. I said nothing. I drove home with the full version of everything I should have said. Of course, I'm repeating it in my head over and over and over at full volume, and it's so fucking clear. It's articulate, and it's devastating in its accuracy, arriving always as it arrives after the moment was gone. This is what the silence cost me. It wasn't immediate, but it was over the following weeks. The direction that was established in the meeting produced exactly the outcome I had known it would, and I had to watch it happen. I could not say I told you so because I hadn't told anyone. I had kept it in the room in my head where it was very well organized and completely useless. And that powerlessness, you guys, of knowing the truth and having chosen not to speak it, there's a suffering there. And it's different than being wrong. Being wrong, like that's survivable, right? Knowing the right thing and staying quiet about it is corrosive. It eats at something inside of you. I made a decision after that. And it just to myself a quiet, solid, at my core ethics and values and beliefs decision that I was not going to be the person who had the true thing and kept it in the room in my head anymore. That the cost of speaking it, whatever the cost was going to be lower than the cost of not speaking it from here forward. That voice was going to get out of the car and into the room where it was needed. And that decision's cost me a lot of things. Relationships that were not strong enough to survive my honesty, rooms where my presence became uncomfortable after I stopped being manageable, opportunities that came with conditions I was no longer willing to meet. And it also has given me things that I have a very clean energy of someone who isn't carrying a room full of unspoken truths. The relationships that are genuinely built on knowing the real version of me. I've got that now. The authority that comes from a person who says what they mean consistently enough that when they speak, people actually listen. That specific aliveness of showing up fully, not the managed version, but the whole thing in every room I enter. The aliveness is worth more than safety for me every single time. You guys, I just interviewed this man who recently had been in a marriage for 11 years before he said the thing that needed to be said, okay? Not 11 weeks, it was 11 years. And the thing he had said was not like this big firework dramatic moment. It was not an accusation or confession. It was just a simple, honest truth that he had been deeply unhappy for most of that time and had been just pretending to be happy for his wife, for his kids, for his community, for himself. Um, he'd said it so many times that in that space, he had almost convinced himself it was true. Almost, but his body knew. His body knew because there was that something is wrong signal in the body. I talked about it a couple episodes ago. Grief and loss, the thing that shows up physically when the emotional truth is not being acknowledged. His body had been running that signal for years, and he attributed it to work stress, to the pressures of providing, to the normal difficulty of adult life. He sat across from me and told me that the day he finally said the truth to his wife, and it wasn't, like I said, not an accusation, not an exit, just like the truth, was the day his body started to feel different. Before anything changed externally, it was just him confessing that. Before any decision had been made about the future of the marriage, before the conversations that followed, the work they did, the rebuilt version of the relationship, you guys, it still exists now. Just the act of saying the true thing after 11 years of not saying it produced a physiological shift that he described as this as a relief of putting down something very heavy that he'd been carrying so long he'd forgotten he was not supposed to have that as part of his body. They stayed married. They are doing the work, building something real from the honest conversation that 11 years of managed silence had made impossible. And he told me that the marriage they have now is not recognizable as the one they were in. And not because the people changed, but because the silence ended. Because the real versions of both of them finally showed the fuck up in the same room at the same time. 11 years. You do not have to wait 11 years. The thing you're not saying is living somewhere in your body right now. And I'm not saying metaphorically, like fucking literally. The throat is where most people hold it. That tightening before the swallowing, that constriction of someone who has a true thing rising and is pressing back down. Do that enough times and the tightening becomes the default. The throat that was designed to carry your voice starts to feel like it's holding the silence instead, like the suppression has become the new muscle memory. Other people hold it in their shoulders, the chronic tension of someone who is managing a weight that never gets put down. the accumulated, unspoken, still in progress conversations that the body is still carrying because the mind will not deal with them directly. The massage therapist cannot fix it. The supplement can't reach it because it's not a physical problem. It is a voice problem. It is what happens to a body that has been told through years of practice that the truth is dangerous and silence is safety. A lot of people, you guys, hold it in the gut. That specific. It's like this is not right signal. The gut sends when life, the life being lived and the truth being known are not aligned. It's not the same thing. And the gut is not subtle. It's been trying to tell you something for a long time. You've been calling it anxiety, overthinking, calling it the stress of the season. It's none of those things, babe. This is the body's way of saying the silence is costing more than you're acknowledging. Your body wants you to say the thing. And it's not because it's going to be comfortable, because the discomfort of saying it is acute and temporary. The discomfort of not saying it, that's the chronic compounding bullshit. And your nervous system, this brilliant, resilient, specifically designed by God nervous system that you've been working on all season, bitch, it knows the difference. Silence in the context of injustice is not neutrality, it's participation. Every time the thing that is wrong is happening and you say nothing, you are casting a vote. Not for the wrong thing necessarily, for the thing continuing, for the silence being the appropriate response, for the person doing the wrong thing to understand the room has consented to the dynamic. That is not a passive position, it is active. It just looks passive because no action was taken. Edmund Burke, the Irish statesman, he's a political philosopher, said the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. He said it 250 years ago. And he was describing the specific mechanism by which the worst things in history happened. Not because everyone was complicit, because the people who were not complicit went quiet. They calculated the cost of speaking and decided it's too fucking high. And their silence was the thing that made the cost for everyone else higher. You are not responsible for changing the world by yourself, but you are responsible for the room you're in. You're responsible for the meeting, for the relationship, for the family dinner. You're responsible for the comment section, the platform, the podcast, the room where your voice is present and the real thing is not being said. That room's your jurisdiction, and your silence in it has consequences that extend far beyond you. I I believe what I believe, and I say what I say without apology, and it's not because it's comfortable. It's because the calling does not come with a mute button. The things I believe about who God is, about what the truth looks like, about the structures in this world that are corrupt and the ones that are not. I say them out loud on a podcast called Listen Bitch, in conversations with people who do not share my worldview, in rooms where my perspective is the minority position. Facebook jail again. I lost thousands of followers speaking the truth. And I'll continue to do it because the alternative, keeping it managed, keeping it safe, keeping it inside the bounds of what everyone in the room can agree with, it's not faithfulness. It's performance. It's fake. And I've been done with the performance for a very long time. Your voice is going to cost you something. So please speak anyway. And what you need to do is you need to find the one conversation you've not been having. Not all of them, just find one, probably the most important one to you. The one that if you honestly would change, it change everything downstream. So write down what you've been wanting to say. Not, I don't want you guys to edit this, okay? But just a real version. Get it on paper in the exact words. And then decide this week when and how you're going to say it. Not all at once if the stakes are high, but one step closer, one true sentence that the other person gets to hear rather than the version you've been performing. And then do the smaller version of this every day. Every day there is at least one moment where you have a true thing to say and the option to either say it or manage it. I want you to work on this because it is going to be the reps that matter, that change the neuroplasticity. I want you to say it once a day minimum. Not, doesn't have to be mean, just honest, right? The thought that is actually there rather than the approved version. The observation you've been keeping to yourself. Maybe the appreciation you feel but have been too busy to express, or the disagreement you've been nodding through. One true thing per day said out loud to the person it belongs to. That's the rep. And that's the pathway being built. And after 30 days of that, after 30 reps of your voice surviving the room, the tightening in your throat starts to loosen. The suppression starts to require more effort than the expression. And your voice starts to come more naturally than the silence. And for the platform, for your podcast, for the content, for the message, give yourself permission this week to say the one thing you've been keeping in 30%. Not to provoke, it doesn't have to come from a way of intentional anger the world, not to perform. Okay, we don't care about clicks and likes and views, but just say the thing that is true and that is yours and that's been waiting. And I just want you to see what happens. I'm telling you what happens. The right people will hear themselves in it. The wrong people will leave. And the difference between your community before and after is not the size, it's the aliveness. Right now, today, there is someone in your life who needs to hear the thing you didn't say last week and the week before, and probably the week before that. There is a relationship that has been slowly suffocating on the silence between you and another person that was supposed to be intimacy but became managed distance because the real conversation stopped happening. There is a community that followed you specifically because something in your voice told them you were going to say the true thing, and you've been giving them 70%, and they can feel the 30% you're keeping back, even if they cannot name it. There is a calling that requires a voice, and the voice keeps stopping at the door of the room where it's needed the most. You know what happens if you keep doing what you've been doing? You've been doing it long enough to know. The flatness doesn't lift, the resentment does not resolve, the distance, it's not going to close, babe. The community is not going to come alive. The calling does not get answered, not because you lack the words, but because you keep choosing the silence. And I work with people who have the message and cannot find the voice to deliver it. Work with people who build the platform and cannot figure out why it is not connecting the way they know it should, who know exactly what they are supposed to say and keep softening it until the thing that needed to land arrives like a suggestion instead of a conviction. And the work is always the same. Not a new strategy, not a better framework, the voice, getting it out of the throat and into the room where it belongs. That is what I do. That is specifically, exactly, precisely what I do. You do not have to have another season to spend on the managed version. The people who need your unmanaged voices are not going to wait indefinitely. The window is open and it is specific and it is right now. Check the show notes, you guys. Come work with me. Tell me what you have been not saying. Let's build a podcast that finally says it. Okay? I will see you guys tomorrow.